The Alchemist's Reality. The Shimmering Paradox of Observation. 1. Introduction. Dr. Elias Thorne spent his professional life submerged in a world of symbols and pure abstraction. While his colleagues in the next building over-wrestled with particle accelerators and finicky laser systems, Elias inhabited the quantum twilight, a realm where reality was a probabilistic mist, not a solid certainty. Specifically, his obsession, the one that kept him awake sketching equations on steamed bathroom mirrors, was the observer effect, and the terrifying, beautiful idea that the active consciousness was not merely a passive recording but an active co-creator of reality. 2. The steep climb of non-empirical truth. His peers, the experimenters, affectionately, and sometimes not so affectionately, referred to his work as Thorne's metaphysical poetry. He worked in the lonely, rarefied air of pure theory, spending 2 decades constructing an elegant, multi-layered mathematical scaffolding that described how and why the mere presence of an observer, a consciousness-seeking data, forced the waveform of a quantum system to collapse, snapping potentiality into a single, definitive reality. His initial papers, thick with the geometry of non-commutative space and the mechanics of information as energy, were met with polite nods and brutal peer reviews. Fascinating mathematics, Thorne, one reviewer had written, but you've provided a mechanism for magic, not physics. 3. The isolation of the unsubstantiated. The years blurred into a Sisyphean struggle. Elias never doubted the math. The equations sang a truth too resonant to be merely an intellectual exercise. But the ridicule chipped away at him. He'd watch young, brash experimentalists secure massive grants for projects that measured mundane interactions, while his own proposals, seeking funding for the incredibly precise, almost impossible to build instruments necessary to test his extreme predictions, were repeatedly rejected. He became gaunt, his office smelling of stale coffee and the ozone scent of deep concentration. His wife, Clara, an astrophysicist who anchored her theories with the cold, hard light of distant galaxies, was his only steadfast believer. "They are testing the soil, Elias," she would say, tapping his worn notebook. "You are charting the sky. It just takes longer for the instruments to catch up to the telescope." For the quantum ripple, evidence in the noise. Then came the new millennium, and with it, technological leaps that felt, to Elias, like a slow sunrise. A team in Geneva, using a revolutionary, near-perfectly isolated system involving entangled photons and a novel detection method, announced they had found an unexplained deviation in their data. The deviation wasn't just a statistical wobble. It was a profound, consistent shift in the observed state's decay rate, a shift that occurred only when a conscious monitoring loop was activated. The physics community buzzed, baffled by a result that defied established, non-local quantum mechanics. 5. The anomaly's confirmation. Elias, now 62, his hair a shock of white, barely noticed the initial papers. He was too deep in a rederivation of his core theorem. But Clara saw it first. She burst into his study late one night, holding a printout, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fierce pride. "Elias," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The magnitude, the decay rate, it's not unexplained." She pointed to the paper's anomalous data points, then stabbed her finger at a messy equation he'd written years ago on the margins of his desk. "It matches your \BM, \psi, collapse coefficient. Exactly." 6. The final state. Collapse to truth. The vindication did not arrive with a flash of light, but with a tidal wave of realization that slowly washed over the scientific world. Elias's metaphysical poetry was not only sound, but it provided the only consistent theoretical framework that explained the Geneva team's staggering empirical proof. The experimentalists had inadvertently validated the chilling power of pure thought. The equations derived in solitude were a precise map of a reality only glimpsed under the most extreme conditions. 7. The eternal power of a symbol. The phone call from Stockholm came 5 years later, on a cold October morning. Elias, now Professor Emeritus, listened to the accented voice detail the Nobel Committee's decision. He heard the words, "for the formulation and prediction of the observer-induced wave function localization." He hung up the phone and walked to his window, He didn't feel triumphant or even particularly happy. He felt a profound, weary stillness. He thought back to the decades of doubt, the quiet scorn, the lonely hours spent arguing with a pencil. He had not only proven the skeptics wrong, but he had also proven something far more fundamental: that the universe, for all its cosmic immensity, was still susceptible to the focused intent of a single, theorizing mind. He picked up the printout of the Geneva data, the one Clara had shown him years ago. He looked at the lines of experimental proof, and then at the elegant, abstract symbols he had drawn long before the technology existed to test them. The symbols felt more real, more eternal, than the measured numbers themselves.